Here's a question I get all the time, and it's a fair one. If the stock market averages around 10% a year, why does every financial advisor tell you that you can only safely spend about 4% of your savings in retirement? Where did the other 6% go? It can feel like someone is holding out on you. So let me be straight with you. That gap is real, and there's a genuine reason for it. Once you understand it, you won't look at your retirement number the same way again. So let me show you. Let me introduce you to Susan. Susan is 65, she just retired, and she has $1 million saved. Now, she has a simple question. How much can she spend every year without running out of money before she runs out of life? The market has averaged about 10% a year for decades, so a reasonable person might think, great, I'll take 10%. That's $100,000 a year, and I'll never even have to touch the principal. Now, I understand why that math feels right, but here's why it falls apart. The 10% you hear about is an average, and averages hide a lot. The market does not hand you a tidy 10% every year. Some years it's up 25%, some years it's down 20%. String enough of those wild swings together, and the average might land near 10% over a long stretch. But the ride to get there is anything but smooth. While you're still working and adding money, those bumps barely matter. You're not touching the account, so a down year is just shares on sale. Time smooths everything out. But retirement changes the picture completely. Once you retire, you stop adding money and you start taking it out. And that one change introduces the single most important risk in all of retirement planning, and it's called sequence of returns risk. Let me show you exactly what this means because this is the heart of the whole thing. Picture two retirees. Both are 65, both start out with $1 million, and both withdraw $50,000 a year. And over their retirement, both experience the exact same set of market returns. The only difference between them is the order those returns show up. The first retiree gets unlucky. The market's worst years land right at the start. In her first year, stocks fall 15%. Her million drops to 850,000. She still needs income, so she withdraws her 50,000 and she ends the year at 800,000. The next year, stocks fall another 10% and her balance slides to 720,000. She takes another 50,000 and she closes the year near 670,000. 2 years in, and she's taken out $100,000 and her account has fallen by a third. Every dollar she pulls out now is a dollar that can never recover because she sold those shares while they were down. The second retiree gets the exact same market, same returns, same withdrawals, but for her, those two brutal years arrive near the end of retirement instead of the beginning. By the time they hit, decades of growth have already done their work, and her advantage is large enough that 2 down years barely leave a mark. Same money, same withdrawals, same returns. The only thing that changed was the order. And the first retiree can run out of money in her 80s, while the second retiree dies with more than she started with. That is sequence of returns risk, and it is the reason the 10% average is a trap. Here's the mechanic underneath it. When the market drops and you're withdrawing at the same time, you're selling shares at a discount to pay your bills. Those shares are gone. And when the market finally recovers, you have fewer shares left to ride the rebound. A down year early in retirement does permanent damage in a way it simply cannot when you were young and adding money. During your working years, a crash is an opportunity because your paycheck keeps buying cheap shares. In retirement, that same crash quietly steals years of life off of your portfolio. So, where does the 4% rule come from? It comes from a financial advisor named William Bengen. Back in 1994, he asked a simple question. What is the most a retiree could have safely pulled from their savings each year, adjusted for inflation, and still made it 30 years, even with the worst possible timing in American history? He tested it against every retirement start date he could find, including the retiree who stopped working in the late 1960s and walked straight into a savage bear market followed by the runaway inflation of the 1970s. That person had the worst sequence of returns on record. And the number that survived even that nightmare was about 4%. So sit with what the 4% really is. It's a survival rate. It's engineered to keep you solvent even when you retire on the single worst day in a century. It was never designed to match the market's return. It's a speed limit that protects you from the one scenario that can ruin a retirement, which is a bad sequence early. And now, I want to be honest with you, because it would be easy to stop there and let 4% sound like a hard law. It isn't one. Benkin himself has kept studying this, and in his 2025 work, he raised his own number to about 4.7%, mostly because a better diversified portfolio holds up a little stronger. Here's the part almost nobody mentions. Across all the retirement start dates he studied, the average retiree could have safely spent closer to 7% a year. The 4% figure is built around the single worst case in history. The typical retiree in his research could have spent far more, and many who stuck rigidly to the 4% left a large pile of money on the table that they never got to enjoy. So, what do you do with all this? A few honest takeaways. First, treat your withdrawal rate as a starting point that you can adjust, not a number carved in stone. The retirees who get in trouble are usually the ones who kept spending like nothing happened while their portfolio is falling. A little flexibility in a down year goes a long way. Second, the biggest danger is concentrated in the first few years after you retire. That window is where sequence risk does its damage. And this is why so much planning centers on protecting those early years, often by keeping a large portion of the portfolio in cash or short-term bonds, so you're never forced to sell stocks in a downturn. Third, your safe number is personal. It depends on your other income, like Social Security or maybe a pension, how long you expect your money to last, and how much you can flex your spending. 4% is a useful anchor for the average person, but your number could be reasonably higher or lower. So let's answer the question we started with. If the market earns 10%, why can you only live on 4%? Because you don't get to spend an average. You have to live through the actual order of returns, and that order can either carry you or sink you, especially in those first few years. The 4% rule is a guardrail. It exists to keep you safe, even if your timing turns out to be terrible. One quick reminder before I let you go. This is educational. It is not personalized financial advice. Everybody's situation is different, and a real plan takes your full picture into account. If you want help figuring out what your own safe number actually looks like, that is the exact thing I do. If you'd like to learn more, there's a link below. I hope this was helpful and made the 4% rule make sense. Have a great rest of your day.